Ladies and gentlemen, it is January the 2nd, 2009. Welcome to the Irv Homer Show. Once again, let me remind you that our format for the year 2009 will be on the East Coast. Right now, it is standard time. Will be from 4 to 5. So set your clocks accordingly. Of course, our program is put on the archive where you can listen and digest it. Once again, we do have a telephone number for you to call. That number is 215-253-8877, 215-253-8877. And we're broadcasting from irvhomer.com, where our website is www.irvhomer.com. If you want to email me, evilerv@irvhomer.com, evilerv@irvhomer.com. And I am proud to say that this is the beginning of a new year. Hopefully we'll bring you information and a different point of view that after this program is over, you will say, I didn't think of that. I do this program, ladies and gentlemen, because we have no agenda on the Irv Homer Show. I'm not a Republican, a Democrat, conservative, liberal. I deal with issues. And I do believe a little later in the program, I will go into the thing that I believe happens to be true, and that is most Americans are centrists, which means most of us with common sense have no particular agenda other than to preserve the Constitution of the United States, to conserve our freedoms, to make the United States a safe, prosperous country to live in, and we have no agenda other than those principles. Work, make a living, provide our families, provide ourselves, make sure our neighbors' rights are not violated. And we're not liberal and we're not conservative. It is so crazy to put a label on everyone, and then some idiot says, you know what? We all have to get together. This program is dedicated to eliminating all the BS that doesn't make any sense. How are you going to get together when you're a liberal, he's a conservative, he's a Republican, he's a Democrat, he's a Libertarian, he's a Green Party, you're Jewish, you're Catholic, you're a Protestant, you're a Methodist, you're a Jehovah's Witness, but we all got to get together. Well, my question is to get together for what? Think about it. Get together for what? You know, the last thing that any government, whether it's our government or any other government, wants is for the people to do what's best for themselves. I spoke to a friend of mine over the New Year's, and we always hear, well, you know what's wrong? Not enough people vote. I'm sure you've heard it. And so he said, well, I don't vote. And I said, well, give me a reason for it. Rather than criticize or condemn people, I want to know why they don't do something or why they do something. And he said something very interesting, and you may have the opportunity to reflect on this as you go through life. He said, I do during my lifetime that which I can do for myself rather than appoint somebody or elect somebody to do it for me. I said, that kind of makes sense. Rather than to do things for ourselves, to protect ourselves, to provide for our common good, to be able to make enough money and spend it judiciously, we elect somebody else to do it for us, called senators, congressmen, presidents, vice presidents. And so I said, well, you need somebody to do something that congressmen, senators, and presidents do. And he said, I do. I want them to stay out of my life, to do the things only that the Constitution tells them what to do and what they're permitted to do. And there is nothing in the Constitution, he said, that gives the government the power to bail anybody out if they make a mistake. We are a charitable nation. If I want to give money to bail out a company, that company should have the right to get on radio or television and say, I need help. I'll give you stock. Whatever you need. If you feel that my product is good enough to stay on the market, send me the money and I will do it, and I will make you an equal partner and you'll share from the profits. And the more I spoke to him, the more sense it made. Why do we elect people to do things for us that we should do ourselves? We know that we shouldn't drive while drunk. I don't need a government to tell me that. We need teachers once again instead of preachers. We must be taught thrift. I don't need the government to force me to save for my old age. That should be my decision. And if I make a bad decision, I deserve to be homeless. We have opted out of personal responsibility to elect somebody to be responsible for us. And so I will engage with this conversation with a gentleman during the year 2009 and pass on his words of wisdom to you while I absorb it to myself. Reflecting on the state of the nation today and associating with people of my age group, I associate with younger people from time to time, but I pose this question to you people my age or younger, say from 55, 60 on up. At what point do you stop learning something? There seems to be a cutoff point in our society, whereas people get older, they say, I know enough and I shouldn't learn anything else. I have my prejudices, I've got my bigotry, I don't learn anything else. But somewhere in the deep recessions of life's continuum, it is important and essential that when you reach the promised land and you pass away, go to sleep. Actually, what we do is die. And upon reaching death, we should die with a book in our hand, trying to educate ourselves as much as possible. There is such a thing known as vacuous conversation. And vacuous conversation basically means that people talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. A, they don't know what they're talking about, and B, nobody else is interested. But at the end of the day, the end of the night, social gathering, you had a good time. Ladies and gentlemen, if you go through a day without learning something, you have wasted that day. You have wasted that day. What I'm going to say is not meant to frighten anyone, not meant to destroy the inauguration of Barack Obama, not to destroy the idiocy of a ditto head. But it came to me today through a rather legitimate source that I cannot mention, in a phone conversation, that as of the first of the year, which was yesterday, the United States military has been put on full alert. I repeat, but the United States military, someone's at the door, but they're coming in. I don't relax. Go, come, Shaney. That's my dog. My dog probably makes more sense sometimes at barking than some of the people I have to talk to. Shaney, go in the front door there and go get him.
Attack.
Don't sit here. Go attack at the front door. She's a killer. She kills food. She kills treats. But she doesn't bother people other than bark. Be that as it may, getting serious, our military, from the information that I have gleaned today, is on maximum alert and maximum readiness. There are many reasons that I could relate that I became aware of today. I will not enumerate them. But if folks listening to this program are in the military, in a command position, I'm sure they will substantiate the things that I said. Many books will be coming out, ladies and gentlemen, after this inauguration day and in the future about the travails of the Bush administration. And the question comes up is, who actually, what actually, and why actually was there a Bush doctrine? And I have to admit that over this weekend, over this holiday season, I became aware of something that will criticize that which I've said in the past. And I am the first one in radio to admit maybe I made an error in judgment. There is a study that was conducted by a Temple University professor that will be releasing a book soon called How Wars End. And many of the time, ladies and gentlemen, we have fought wars and won the war, but lost the peace. And sometimes winning the peace is a lot more difficult than winning the war. Israel right now and Hamas in the Gaza are involved in a confrontation. Hamas is lobbying missiles into Israel for years. Israel has striking back with air raids. And it's easy to do that, even though there are people dying. But it's easy to do that. It's easy to fight the war. But what is the big problem in the Middle East? The big problem is peace. So war is not a problem. War is just the unleashing of military might, one nation against another, one people against another. But how do you win the peace? And listening to an interview on how wars end was one of the most enlightening bits of information of an hour interview that I've heard since I told you not to read the book, The Report from Iron Mountain, The Feasibility of War and Peace. And what is the purpose of war? And A, how do you know you won the war? And B, how do you win the peace? An interesting part of the dialogue of the interview of how wars end was a historical fact in our own Civil War. And I will just give you an excerpt of the end of the Civil War. And the question arose, who won the war? How did it end? When Lee surrendered to Grant, Grant refused to refer to General Lee of the Confederacy as the enemy. He was castigated by many military men of the Union Army for not referring to the Confederacy as the enemy and referring to General Lee as the enemy. And the brilliance of General Grant which we don't have today, and if we do, they're kept behind closed doors. His logic was this: if I refer to the Confederacy and General Lee as the enemy, then I am going to have to make up to my enemy. And will the enemy accept it? So he referred to the Confederacy and General Lee as an opponent. An opponent in combat, an opponent in politics, an opponent in ideology, but never once, even when he became president, did he ever refer to them as the enemy. And the difference between World War I and World War II, on how World War I ended and how World War II ended. Knowing the generosity of America after World War II, many Germans surrendered to Americans because they had seen the peace and studied the peace of World War I. They also studied various pieces, EACE, that Russia had been involved in, and realized that after World War I, America's concern was to rebuild the devastation of Europe. Must also remember that Germany was not destroyed to the degree it was after World War II. Well, General Marshall knew what was necessary to have the opponents of Germany, even though they were brutes and Nazis and everything said about them was true, but realized that we are going to have to occupy these people. And we have destroyed the things that they were comfortable with, the creature comforts. Of course, they were not happy with the politics. They were not happy with the oppression of Nazism. They were not happy with the destruction of their political beliefs, their ideology, their religion. But they still had homes that they could go to and schools their kids could go to and the so-called Hofbrau's where they had their beer. And they started resenting the United States because although we freed them, we destroyed them. And so General Marshall, studying the history of World War I and the peace of World War I, instituted the Marshall Plan, in which, in addition to winning World War II, it was necessary to win World War peace. The Russians didn't learn that. And so it's necessary for the Russians to follow their dictate of oppression, persecution, torture, and built a wall. And why did West Germany become our ally? Why didn't they take the Russians as an ally? Well, if you had been in the area before the wall came down, you would see a West German economy booming. You would see the rehabilitation of homes, highways, hospitals, churches, institutions. It was denied by the Russians because the Russians wanted to punish the Germans. And so they did. But to keep them in, they had to shoot them at the wall. Now, whether you agree with the war in Iraq or Afghanistan, and history, I think, will prove that this administration under George Bush got us involved in a war that we shouldn't have been in. And we're still in it, that we're not going to win. Because we won't be able to win the peace. And so when I learned of the book called The Corporate Warriors, in which Halliburton, Brown Root, and other civilian contractors that number about 160,000 today, I, like many talk show hosts who are observant, without an agenda, not the liberal, not the conservative, not the bloviators, not the windbags, we were looking for the answer. How are we going to win the peace in Iraq? We had heard what was that guy's name who was the spokesperson for Saddam Hussein? He sounds like this new spokesperson for Hamas. Oh, we're tough, we're tough. Remember that guy who was on television every Monday and Tuesday prior to the invasion of Iraq? Oh, the Republican Army, the Republican Army of Iraq, when Saddam, how tough they were. Well, that was bravado, BS. The same as this Hamas spokesman is bravado and BS. Same type of windbag. He was on television over the holiday season, and it's on today. But they realized, and much to the credit, after John Bremer was thrown out as the civilian administrator, realized that we killed many, many, many thousands of Iraqis. We destroyed a lot of their homes, their hospitals, their schools, their infrastructure. So in the last 2 years, after the Bush administration had blundered for 6 years, went back and looked at history to see how wars end. And this civilian construction of corporate warriors going into Iraq, rebuilding the infrastructure, rebuilding the schools, rebuilding the hospitals, rebuilding the roads, generated a turnaround of Iraqi hatred for the United States for destroying their country to one where it is being rebuilt. As we rebuild Iraq, costing us millions of dollars that we don't have, we will win the peace in Iraq. Not the war. The war was easy. Overthrowing Saddam Hussein was easy. Capturing him and executing him, that's easy. But the most difficult thing to do is to win that peace. To end this war in such a way that the victors, namely us and our coalition of the willing, are not despised and considered to be an occupying force. And so whoever in the Bush administration, it was not Dick Cheney, it was not Donald Rumsfeld, it was not Wolfowitz, it was not Pearl, but it was those generals, Richard Clark, who was castigated by the right-wing windbags on television, the Limbaugh curse, destroyed Richard Clark because he dared speak the truth. And now Richard Clark, out of all of these geniuses that Bush surrounded himself with, after getting rid of generals like Kinsicky and other generals who knew how to win the war, but they also knew how to win the peace, how the war should end. So our victory in Iraq that the bloviators are bragging about is not the victory of the surge. It is the victory of the reconstruction of a country that we blew to hell. And Israel's problem today, as it was in Lebanon, what do you do after you destroy a country? How do you ingratiate yourself to the people whose homes you just destroyed, whose people you killed, and win them over so you don't have to be an occupying force? I have spoken on radio for over 40 years, and I've told people of a little experience that I had that reinforces my credibility on radio, and that was when I first landed in Italy after the invasion, and the Army engineers built an airport in Foggia, Italy, in southern Italy. The first pass I got to go into town for rest and rehabilitation, went to Naples. I was instructed not to wear Air Force wings or an Air Force patch. And being 19 years of age at the time, I couldn't figure it out. I was proud to be a pilot. I was proud to bomb the enemy. I was proud of my achievement as a little kid from Wissinoming, that I helped America win the war. But all these things that I was proud of, I was not permitted to wear. Couldn't figure it out. I wanted to walk through Naples, and I wanted to walk through Foggia, walk through Rome, proud of my Air Force uniform with my wings and my 15th Air Force patch. And command said, "You will not wear that identification." Couldn't figure it out. Until it sunk into my head. Why should these people like me? I just killed and blew up half their country. How the war ends. What did we as a country have to do in Italy to get those people to like us after we destroyed their country? Ergo, how do we get the Iraqis to like us once we bombed the hell out of their country? And so the most difficult thing to do is to win the peace. As we speak here right now on the 2nd of January, on Friday, great minds of the War College of America and of Israel are debating if we go into Gaza and the Israeli army, which has the potential that was not used in Lebanon, but the figures that I was made aware of today is approximately 265,000 Israeli troops that are potentially capable of going into the Gaza and the West Bank. But the problem before the Knesset today in Israel is after we do go in and destroy the territory with collateral damage, as we did in Iraq and are doing in Afghanistan, how do you end the war and have those people, like the Israelis once again, who will provide them with medicine, food, clothing, infrastructure, give a legitimate accounting to the money that Yasser Arafat had stolen from them? As I said in previous programs, our problem is not in winning the war. And our problem is not living by sound bites on radio or television, or listening to windbags who have an agenda of making money and couldn't give a damn about America, because it is a divisiveness that I don't know if this country can sustain itself this coming year. One idiot today, sitting in for the OxyContin kid, talking about socialized medicine is coming to America under the Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton plan. I am so disgusted with the information that is put out about socialism. It just boggles my mind. And yet the message never goes out. The problem with healthcare in America today is not that we don't have the best healthcare in the world, with the exception of research, both in surgical procedures and in medical procedures, in prescriptions. Our problem is cost, not medical delivery. You don't see people dying on the streets of cancer in America. You don't see people dying of MS, MD. You don't see that, because everyone in America has health care. Rich, poor, insurance or not. Let me repeat. America does not have a shortage of health care. What America has a shortage of is how to pay for it. And I don't know whether I brought it up the other night or not, but I'll just divert right now. I was opposed to the USS New Jersey being put up as a monument in New Jersey. Yes, it was a great battleship. It had a lot of memories, served this country nobly. But I knew what was going to happen, and it happens. They can't afford it. Right now, the funding for the USS New Jersey has been cut back by the federal government. Camden certainly can't afford it. The tolls and the admission to go on the USS New Jersey has diminished because of the economy. And now we've got a big hunk of iron over there that they're having to go hat in hand to pay for it. I, as a patriotic American, and I speak for myself, not anybody else, I don't care about Navy vessels. I'm caring about airplanes. I wasn't in the Navy. I didn't sail on the New Jersey. But I contribute to an organization called the Confederate Air Force that has rebuilt 3 B-17s, and we maintain them without government aid. And they fly around the country, charging people to fly in it for half an hour or an hour. Or if you're a pilot, you can fly it for $400 an hour. So we don't ask the government for subsidy. The USS New Jersey, in my opinion, should have been taken out to sea, where many of the men served bravely on that ship and were buried in the deep, and that's where the USS New Jersey belongs, with the men who died on it. But now, hat in hand, we're all going to have a guilt trip dumped on us. Well, you can't let the New Jersey rust and rot. It costs $500,000 a year to maintain it. This is the mentality that we Americans have. We love monuments. Oh, we love monuments. We can't afford them, but we love monuments. If you have a monument, you have a cause, then pay for it. I have no problem. Pay for it. We have historical museums. We have historical locations where people paid to put these things up. If you want to put a monument someplace, buy the ground, put it up, and have a source of funding for it. Don't come to me as a taxpayer to pay for your memorial that I have no interest in whatsoever. If I have a memorial that I want to build, I will build it, and I will see to it that it's financially maintained as long as there is a monument or a statue or some type of memorabilia there. But we have complete and total medical care in America. And when I hear these nutcases yelling about well, in Canada, if you need a hip replacement, it takes you 2 months. Do you know why hip replacements and knee replacements are not done immediately in America or in Canada? The hip replacement and the knee replacement that this nitwit on 1210 didn't talk about. The big problem with replacements is the rehabilitation. And so this nitwit, well, they won't give it. I know people that I know personally, they will not do a hip replacement, a knee replacement, an ankle rebuild, because they cannot be rehabilitated because of their weight. So what good is the knee replacement on a friend of mine who weighs 340 pounds? There is no way in his God's name could he ever be rehabilitated after that surgery would be performed. There is a formula on replacements. So many pounds per foot that you're tall, so much fat content, so much long-range perspective as to whether or not the rehabilitation can be conducted because of the height and the weight of the individual. Yet this idiot is on 600 radio stations, and no idiot caller said, well, how much did these people weigh that the government wouldn't pay for a hip replacement or a knee replacement? Nobody ever asked that question. And this is the idiocy, ladies and gentlemen, that the public is being inundated with, both on the left and on the right. Our telephone number is 215-253-8877. Let me go to the chat room. Barbara Feasterville, can you give me some explanation as to why the United States military is on high alert, which you stated? The possibility, Barbara, and this is strictly hypothesizing, but war colleges deal with alternatives, options, and expectations. If you recall, when Joe Biden was selected as vice presidential candidate prior to the election, he made a statement that was misquoted in the bloviators, the Limbaugh nitwits, that somebody will test the next president of the United States. Limbaugh and that ilk picked it up and said that Obama is going to be tested. History proves that regardless of who gets elected, all presidents of the United States are tested by their enemy, Democrat or Republican, liberal or conservative. The tension that is arising in the Middle East, the fact that Iran now has the capability of launching missiles 1,500 miles, the fact that we have 130,000 troops in Afghanistan and Iraq, 130,000 to 160,000 civilian employees there, many Americans in Israel as tourists, students, doctors. The fact that in Indonesia, North Korea, the United States is extremely vulnerable. Two reasons. Number one, America must protect its military men and its civilians. And number two, in the event of an all-out war in the Middle East, the evacuation of American citizens will be primary for whatever administration is in prior to January the 20th or under the Bush administration before he leaves office. That and many other options and hypothesis is the reason that the United States military is on high alert until at least after the inauguration. The real reason is the vulnerability of the United States because it is stretched so thin. But while we may be enjoying New Year's Eve parties and the Sunday game with the Minnesota Vikings, the war machine and the war college is sitting watching very carefully the world events. It is possible that Israel will not only strike the Gaza, but will strike Iran. It is also very possible that we may strike Iran. This Sunday in Egypt, the Arab League will be meeting. And the Arab League, for the first time that I'm aware of, and I've listened carefully to the Arab League's meetings and hearings and testimony, it is the first time that the Arab League has brought to the table that the reason Israel survives is because the Arab nations dislike each other, mistrust each other, more than collectively they dislike Israel. If the Arab nations, of which there are 22 of them, form a coalition against Israel and the United States and launch a war in which 22 Arab nations with military hardware that we sold them launches an attack in the Middle East, joining forces with the Taliban and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, joining forces with the terrorists in Iraq, joining with the forces of Iran and Syria and Egypt, there is going to be one hell of a war in the Middle East. And because we have almost 750,000 Americans serving in the Middle East in some capacity, we will possibly lose many Americans and we won't be able to do anything about it. And I do believe that is the reason that the United States military has been put on high alert. They are also very concerned about the possibility of almost anarchistic displays in Washington, D.C. on January the 20th, with a potential of 2 million people going to the inauguration. There are no bathroom facilities for 2 million people. There are no sleeping accommodations for 2 million people. There are no feeding capacities for 2 million people. And there is no transportation for a mass evacuation of Washington, D.C. in the event of a missile strike, where at the present moment, whether people like it or not, there are nuclear launching submarines off our coasts of both the West Coast and the East Coast. As we have nuclear submarines patrolling the coasts of Russia, in the Mediterranean, the North Sea, and the Pacific, the enemy also has submarines and military aircraft overflying us. As we speak, there are 3 Russian warships right now in Cuba celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Cuban Revolution. It's 50 years since Fidel Castro overthrew Batista. And as I say on this program and on my commercial radio program, people don't want to hear about it. You don't want to know about it. You don't give a damn about it. But nitwits like me, who for years on radio have been prophetic enough to point out our weaknesses, and we have prevented ourselves from being victims of misinformation, disinformation, and propaganda, still continue to alert the American public of what goes on. I know people, when I said that China operates the Panama Canal at both ends, how do we hear about it? How do we hear about it? How do we hear about it? When I tell them that Chinese submarines are off the coast of Atlantic City, how do we hear about it? How do we hear about it? When you explain to people that the militancy of Islam is to destroy Christianity and Judaism as the leading religions of the world, how do we hear about it? The Catholic Church will always be supreme. There'll always be Jews. Don't want to hear about it. Well, you can only put your head in the sand so much and so long before you have to face reality. I don't mean that you should be a prophet of doom, that the end of the world's coming tomorrow, and that America's doomed, that we're all going to be blown to hell. I don't mean that in the slightest. I do mean the teachings of our forefathers, classic statements like the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. You walk in town, Center City, Philadelphia, New York, you better learn where you're going, how you're walking, and being observant as to who's around you. When I go in Center City, Philadelphia, I walk up against the wall of a building. This way I'm only vulnerable to 2 means and 2 ways of being attacked. from the left or right, or from behind, but not one side. The left or right side is covered and protected by the wall. There are means of walking and protecting yourself. People don't know that. And as America goes on its merry way with its casinos and its sports programs, thank goodness we have people like myself, both in government and in the military, who are observant enough to know that this country is extremely vulnerable as more and more sophisticated weaponry is developed in two areas. Number one, on the potential of destruction, and the other is the potential for observing and for deterrence. And so I am extremely concerned about the next 20 days, 18 days to be exact, when there will be a surge of humanity similar to Broadway, New Year's Eve, on the vulnerability of those 2 million people that will be in Washington, and whether they can be protected or not, and where they're going to go to the bathroom, where they're going to eat, where they're going to sleep, and how many agent provocateurs will be there to stir up trouble. If I were President-elect Obama, with the nature of terrorism in the world today, and the cost of what this inauguration is going to cost, it's going to be astronomical. I would have had a very, very, very private inauguration. This is going to be a coronation, ladies and gentlemen. This is not going to be an inauguration. I hope that in the year 2009, more and more people become aware of the vulnerability of the United States. Socially, financially, politically, and yes, I'll even throw in morally. But each person must establish their own morality so that they don't hurt anyone else. I would like to inaugurate a new political party. The new political party would be called "It Ain't Nobody's Business But My Own." As you don't want government sticking their nose into your business, I don't want you sticking your nose into my business. Your business is none of my business unless you infringe on my constitutional rights. If you want to use your backyard as a bathroom, that's your property. You can poop in it all you want to. I don't care. Now, if the smell offends me, I may insist that you use a spray deodorant or something. Say, you want to fornicate your wife at your pool on your property? God bless you, go do it. What do I care? We have got to learn to stop sticking our nose into everybody's business and wanting to convert them to your way of thinking. I have never in my broadcast career said, follow me. What I have said, this is what works for me. It may work for you, it may not work for you. It's not my business. We must learn to mind our own damn business in our personal. I get a kick when I hear people saying, it's none of our business what's going on over there. And the same idiot will demand prayer in school, will demand that gays be struck from the planet Earth. We'll demand that, they'll demand that. But America, stay out of my business. I will stay out of yours. There is a congressman, I believe in Arizona, who I will support wholeheartedly in the year 2009. And think about the radicalism of this guy. Think how radical this guy is. He wants legislation introduced in Washington that before any bill becomes law, the constitutionality of that bill must be valid. On this bailout, ladies and gentlemen, if you look at what the Bush administration has done, case after case after case of violating the Constitution, I never gave him the right to take my money and give it to Ford or General Motors or Chrysler. I never gave him that right. There's nothing in the Constitution that says Irv Homer has to take his tax dollars and give it to them, or to bail out any of the banks, or bail out Lehman Brothers, or bail out Bear Stearns. There's nothing in there that says they can take our money and bail them out. Nothing in there at all. We must go back to the basic constitutional rights and do for ourselves instead of electing somebody else to do it for us. And it just absolutely boggles my mind that I see the way this country's going now. I am tired of saying, well, it's the Democrats' fault, it's the Republicans' fault, the Democrats' fault. We are going to be facing, in the next 4 years under the Barack Obama administration, a Republican Party and a conservative wing, instead of helping America with loyal opposition. I mean loyal opposition. Loyal to America but opposed to the ideas. Instead of self-gratifying and making brownie points on radio or television. But what we're going to have for the next 4 years is a Republican, conservative, right-wing party to destroy the Democrat Party and the United States for the next 4 years, so that Barack Obama will never run for a second term. Is that Americanism? Let's destroy the Democrat Party, and then we can rebuild America once again in the year 2011. That's what you got to look forward to, the way this country's going right now. The Limbaugh nitwits, the Medved nitwits, the Gallagher nitwits, the Hannity nitwits will revel in any failure in the Obama administration. They are praying, they are pleading with God Almighty, please destroy this guy. If it happens to destroy America, we really don't give a rat's ass, as long as the Democrats and Barack Obama is destroyed. That's all these conservative Republican fake phony frauds are concerned about. Think about it. And if you happen to be one of those conservative right-wing nutcases who will throw the baby out with the bathwater, you deserve to go to hell and lose everything you've got. I'm not saying approve everything that the Democrats do. I'm not saying approve everything that Obama does. But be constructive in your criticism and not destructive in your actions. And I'll show you the cowardice of both the left and the right. More so the right. For years I have had days on the air and said, today's the day to criticize me. I'll give you 2 minutes. Excuse me. Never responded. I just said, you've got 2 minutes, criticize what I've said or what I've done. Never got a call. The little radio station I'm working on now has a program of talk radio prior to mine. I've been beat up on that hour's program so bad sometimes that if I took it to heart, I wouldn't have walked into the studio. But none of those conservative, right-wing, fake, phony frauds ever call me and tell me to my face. And until you Republican conservatives learn how to confront things with constructive criticism instead of destructive verbiage, you're a loser without a mezuzah. Think about that. Till the next time, I'm Irv Homer.